Jekyll here with my mini review for Twice's latest EP, Ready to Be. Given that the girls are without a doubt the biggest active female K-pop act, and it's been almost 7 months since their last full group release, Between 1 and 2 with the lead single Talk That Talk, this release has been hotly anticipated by many fans, and I'm definitely very excited to break it down and discuss. Personally, this release is also an important one for me. Twice's last full group release that I can say I actually fully enjoyed was Alcohol Free way back in 2021, which for me was one of the best releases that year and one of Twice's most cohesive albums to date. But since then, their full album Formula of Love and mini album Between 1 and 2 were largely underwhelming for me, with the latter currently standing as one of my least favorite releases from the group. Twice were my ult for quite a while, but in the past year and a half, music has definitely slipped, and that means that this release is really important for me in deciding where I stand with this group. I unintentionally ended up avoiding most of the promo for this release until just a few days before the comeback, which meant I didn't really have any opinions about it either way aside from Moonlight Sunrise. And after listening to the album, I think that I mostly feel the same way. There are some things that worked and some things that didn't, and I think that is kind of reflected in the overall score that I'll give at the end. But let's get more into it. For me, this is definitely an improvement over Talk That Talk, and I think Set Me Free has some nice things going on. Generally, the soundscape is really pleasant, with the bass and string hits in the chorus adding some nice emphasis on top of the more bouncy, groovy bass, and the vocals finding a nice balance just on overall of the movement that's going on underneath them. And I think there's also some really nice vocal moments. The vocal line definitely really stood out, especially in the choruses. I think Jihyo, Jeongyeon, and nayeon really just killed their part in the choruses. And I think there's also some nice direction in the lines in the verses. I'm thinking about the first verse, where Mina's part ends a half step lower than Jihyo's part that comes before, which adds some nice harmonies into the overall mix and just helps the song build into the pre-chorus. From verse to chorus, there are so many little earworms in this song, and I can guarantee that a lot of these melodies are going to be stuck in my head for the next few days. The most glaring issue I have with Set Me Free is the bridge. It just pulls back on everything that the song is doing really well, replacing it with a trap section that just comes out of nowhere and has no real bearing on what happens before or after it. And I generally have an issue with raps that are just thrown into the bridge because they need to be there. This is an issue that I have with all of K-pop, not just with Twice. And while in Twice's songs they generally do have a lot of bridge-centered raps, they always work better when they're integrated into the song instead of in their own completely different section. Here, the trap section just leaves the rapping really exposed, and because of this, I think it just falls flat. I also generally have a problem with the pre-chorus. I just think it's not long enough to build any direction or tension, and I feel like because of this, the chorus loses a bit of impact that it could have had. But since Twice's work is now kind of more Western influence on the production side, going with producers like Melody Fontana and Lindgren instead of JYP or Black Eyed Pilsung, I understand that they're trying to build their sound into more kind of standard pop than specifically K-pop, and pre-choruses aren't really used in pop. It's more just verse, chorus, so I get why there isn't a pre-chorus here, or there isn't much of one. But I still think that if the pre-chorus had 1 or 2 more lines for more build-up, it would work better in the context of the song as a whole. Overall, though, really catchy title track, definitely suited to their more recent sound, and definitely a yes for me. I want you to hear me say, Moonlight Sunrise, baby come be my starlight, Moonlight Sunrise, baby just to make you stay. So you'll notice that the rating that I put here for Moonlight Sunrise is just a little bit higher than it was in our January monthly review, and that's because between then and now my feelings on this song have changed just a little bit. I enjoyed the verses much more this time around. I think the first verse especially does a good job mixing the bass, instrumentals, and percussion below well-crafted melodies and well-executed vocals, and there are a lot of little production moments that add to the general atmosphere that the verses create. The transition from verse to stripped-back pre-chorus works on a production level, where the absence of sound adds a good amount of tension that is pushing the song forward, and even though I still think the vocals are a little bit clunky in the pre-chorus, the ideas there make sense. However, just as on first listen, a lot of my problems with Moonlight Sunrise are with the chorus. The addition of trap makes sense theoretically because it adds another layer to make the chorus feel just a little bit more full and developed. But in reality, the track just bulldozes over everything else that was built up before. I don't think the vocals in the chorus are particularly good. I think, especially in terms of, Momo or Chewy, the vocals are just a little bit out of their range, just a little too high for them. And they're also not helped by the direction of the melody. There's basically no phrasing, there's basically no direction. And so there isn't really anywhere for the vocals to go. And so the vocal delivery comes out as both flat and strained, and I just think it's generally unpleasant to listen to. And I think this lack of direction kind of continues into the third chorus as well, where before the third chorus, they repeat the chorus again as like the end of the bridge without as much production underneath it. And I just think this repetition feels just too uninspiring. Like, it would have been better if they had chosen something else to add in there instead of just building the chorus in again. And the ad-libs on top of the third chorus are really, really, really high. And because they're so high, they're kind of sort of further back in the sound, and it doesn't feel as natural. And so there isn't as much impact as there should be in a third chorus, and I think the song kind of falls flat at the end instead of finishing out strong. So I think the end does not necessarily mirror the beginning. Where I liked a lot of stuff in the beginning, I didn't really like as much to the end, and so it doesn't really keep me in it for that long. It's definitely better the first time I listen to it though, so maybe next time I'll find some more things that I like. Somehow this song just sounded a bit dated to me. Like, I don't know what it was, but I kept being reminded of like 2010s Western pop, and I think a lot of it came down to the production actually. It's really reliant on guitar with some rhythm set and also some simple synth behind it, and it doesn't really try to add anything else on top of it to make it more interesting or to add more layers. I think the chorus also feels a bit disjointed between the vocals and the production of the song, because while the production is staying kind of flat, like I mentioned before, the vocals are a lot higher and there's a lot of jumps. And I generally tend to associate that a little bit more with a more upbeat or exciting song. And I don't think my brain was able to mesh these two contrasting ideas together into one kind of cohesive idea of what this song is trying to be. I think the rap is also just not good at all. The transition into it especially is very harsh, has very harsh articulation, and that just completely threw me out of the song. Up until that point, I think I was sort of in it still, but from there on, it was just so hard for me to find anything to latch onto. So just a bit disappointed in the song, to be honest. On principle, I'm just not the hugest fan of rock concepts in K-pop. I think I talked a little bit about this when I was talking about Idol's Tomboy, but to me, rock and K-pop just feels overly corporate and often tries too much to blend rock with pop, which honestly are two genres that do not and should not ever go together. So when it came to the song, I think the cards were already kind of stacked against me. That being said, I do appreciate that the song is at least trying new things, and some of it does work pretty well. I'm actually kind of fine with the anti-drop. It was produced well, the vocals are nice, both in writing and delivery, and there's enough production on it to bring a new color that the song hadn't yet explored. The vocals in the second half of the chorus are also really nice, especially from Jeongyeon and Jihyo. And I think Jihyo especially really showed in this song because her timbre is really full and dark and powerful, and her delivery on all of her lines is just spectacular. When listening to the song, I think I enjoyed it less than Got the Thrills on like a surface level, and I think both songs ultimately don't really go anywhere, but I do think there's something to be said about trying new things even if they don't work, and in this song that's the anti-drop, and so I think that's where Blame It On Me makes up points, and so that's why I put them about on equal footing. Wallflower is without a doubt the best song on this mini. I really enjoyed how groovy it was, and I think a lot of this comes down to smart choices on the production level. The whole song sits in this softer, stripped back space, using what it has to its advantage without trying to add too much else. Of all the songs in the album, I think Twice's vocals shone the most here as a full group, and I think the timbres of all the members really work on this song. No one feels out of place sonically, and all of the lines sound good. I think the first chorus is definitely my favorite part of this song. It's so stripped back with, just vocals, percussion, a little bit of synth, and then it just slowly layers everything back into where it was before, and it's just seamless. Jeongyeon also really sounded great on the first chorus. I think it was my favorite part of the song partly because of her delivery of the line. And I think generally there are a lot of little details in the song that are really nice, like the addition of claves in parts of the verse and the chorus. And I think there are a lot of other layers that I would really enjoy just picking apart bit by bit to appreciate them as I listen to the song later. A couple gripes. I think the rap was really unnecessary, and the sudden shift to accommodate it is just distracting. It didn't need to be there, and it shouldn't have been there. And also, while the song is good, it doesn't necessarily fit into the soundscape of the whole mini. This isn't a big thing, just something I thought I would bring up, since minis are generally a little bit on the cohesive side, and this one is not as cohesive. Still a great song though, and I'm definitely going to listen to Wallflower a lot over the next few months. After Wallflower, I think Crazy Stupid Love is a really weak ending to this mini. The only thing I really can say about it is that it's boring. It's very clearly a filler track. The song itself doesn't have any personality, it's just bland, and I didn't feel like I was drawn into any specific part of it. It didn't try anything new, and that made me really lose interest. The one plus, I think, is that the second verse rap in this song really works. When I said earlier that Twice's raps are best when they're integrated, this is what I mean. The rap fits into the larger picture of the song without having to make any changes on the production side. It doesn't disrupt anything that comes after, it just sits in the space that was already developed. Also, was it just me, or did this song kind of sound like a fan song? I don't know why I got that impression, because clearly that's not the thematic intention. I mean, the song is called Crazy Stupid Love, so probably not a fan song. But it just sounds like one to me, maybe just because it's just on the filler side. Yeah, but overall, not interested in this song. Not my favorite at all. So overall, this release is definitely hit or miss. I saved 3 songs. I saved Set Me Free, Moonlight Sunrise, and Wallflower, which to be honest is 3 more than I saved for Talk That Talk, so an improvement. However, looking at the mini as a whole, I'm left confused as to what the identity of this release actually was. Some of the songs that stood out to me, especially Wallflower, it could be argued did not actually fit into the larger picture that this album is trying to capture. And as a result, I'm left with a bit of a mixed impression. I'm not really sure which side I'm going to gravitate towards. And I think a lot of my gripes with this album and with Twice's more recent sound stem from the fact that it's generally a lot more Western influenced now than it was in the past, which means that the production has to take a step back from making the really bombastic choices that for me are what characterize K-pop. That being said, I do appreciate that their sonic identity is still somewhat intact, even with the shift to more quote-unquote Western sound. There are still plenty of earworms scattered across this track, which is just classic Twice. And there's also that characteristic Twice flair and energy that's pulsing through every track, and I don't think that will ever go away. Let me know what you think of this mini in the comments, and as always, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one. Jekyll out.